What if everyone around you began to disappear? The Black Death. Imagine waking one morning, the village quieter than ever. Your neighbor's door remains shut. No smoke rises from his chimney. No footsteps cross the road. Yesterday, he was alive. Today, people only whisper his name. A week later, your brother is gone. A month later, half your village vanishes. The baker, the priest, the children who ran beside the well. One by one, they disappear, leaving behind bowls, shoes, beds, tools, and unfinished work. The most terrifying part, nobody knows why. Is it in the air, the water, a punishment? This was Europe during the Black Death, sweeping across the continent between 1347 and 1351. The pandemic spread from trade routes linked to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, carried by ships, rats, fleas, and an invisible bacterium beyond the comprehension of the time. Its origins are still debated, often traced back to Central Asia. By the time the worst waves passed, around 25 million lives were lost in Europe. Some estimates are even higher, but these weren't just numbers. They were neighbors, parents, children, friends. This tale isn't just about disease, dates, or death counts. It's about something more personal. What did it feel like to survive when the world seemed to be ending? What did it mean to keep breathing when loved ones were gone? Before the Black Death became history, it was a profound mourning, a family coping with loss, a home. Before the silence came, life moved with a rhythm understood by all. Mornings began with smoke rising from low roofs, animals stirring in pens. Tired hands reached for tools before the sun fully climbed. The market buzzed with voices and scents: bread, wool, fish, earth, and firewood. Children darted between carts. Women carried water. Men toiled in fields that had fed families for generations. The church bell marked prayer, work, and rest. Life was hard but known. People feared hunger, winter, war, and sickness. They had no idea the ordinary sounds of life would soon become what survivors missed most. Then, almost as if the world had whispered before it screamed, the first rumors arrived. Somewhere beyond the next road, people were falling sick. In another town, families were closing their doors. Travelers spoke in hushed tones about fever, weakness, swellings, and deaths that struck too quickly to comprehend. At first, perhaps some wanted to believe it was far away. Fear is easier to carry when it belongs to someone else. Fields still needed tending. Bread still had to be baked. Children kept asking for food. Life demanded continuation, even as the shadow crept closer. Then one morning, the rumor had a name. It was no longer distant. It was a woman from the market, a man from the next lane, a child whose laughter had filled the people. Searched for answers, but every answer birthed another fear. Was it bad air, punishment, a sign from heaven? Was death already inside their homes before anyone noticed? They did not understand germs or bacteria. They only knew something invisible had invaded their world. And once the invisible danger felt near, even the safest places lost their meaning. A home transformed from a shelter against rain and hunger into a space where loved ones listened for breathing in the dark. Morning could mean relief or another absence. The bed, once a place of rest, became a waiting space. The table, filled with family chatter, now held empty spaces no one knew. Outside, doors lingered closed. Neighbors, once sharing bread or news, hesitated to step closer. A hand extended could offer comfort but feel like danger. Even love became painful, asking people to come nearer just as fear urged them to retreat. Still, some stayed by the sick, carried water, whispered prayers when medicine was absent, and sat beside the dying. The plague did not just invade streets and homes. It infiltrated trust, touch, and the distance between people who once felt safe. And when the worst sickness passed through a house, what remained felt heavier than fear itself. A survivor might step outside to find the village still standing, yet somehow it felt life. The road was there, the well was there, the church wall remained, but the people who gave those places meaning had faded. A doorway could evoke memories of a father, a field might recall a family. A small wooden bowl could serve as proof that someone had lived, even if the world moved on without. Survival from a distance can appear as mercy, but up close it may feel like a burden no one wished to bear. Why am I still here? Why did they leave before me? Why did the young, the gentle, the needed ones vanish while I remained? These questions lingered, unanswered, within a person for years. Survivors were deemed lucky for continuing to breathe. But luck is a strange word when every familiar place becomes a memory. To survive the Black Death wasn't merely to evade death. It was to awaken each morning in a world that still had sunlight, wind, and seasons, yet no longer resembled home. Loneliness did not stay confined to one heart. It spread through streets, churches, and markets. Some prayed with unprecedented devotion, not out of weakness, but because prayer was the only language left for such immense pain. Some fled, hoping distance could shield them. Others locked their doors and listened to suffering from behind walls. Some stepped forward when fear urged them to retreat, carrying water, watching over children, and comforting the sick. The plague revealed a harsh truth about human nature. Disaster doesn't forge only one kind of person. It can chill the frightened or awaken quiet bravery in the ordinary. In places void of answers, suspicion grew. People sought reasons and sometimes someone to blame. That's one of fear's oldest shadows. When the real enemy remains unseen, the human mind often turns to whatever it can grasp. Yet beneath it all lay the same broken question. How do we remain human when the world no longer? When people asked how to remain human amid fear, the answer arrived slowly. After the worst had passed, the living faced what remained. There was no neat conclusion, no morning when Europe simply became safe again. Doors opened carefully. Markets returned with fewer voices. Fields waited for hands that would never return. Workshops stood silent, lacking the people who once crafted wood, metal, bread, and the world continued, but it continued with empty spaces everywhere. For survivors, rebuilding wasn't solely about mending houses or planting crops. It was learning to live within a new order. With fewer workers, the hands that remained grew more valuable. A farmer, a servant, a craftsman. Those who once had little choice could now sometimes demand more than before. Not because the world had become kind, but because loss had altered the balance of need. Landowners retained land, but land couldn't harvest itself. Towns had walls, but walls couldn't bake bread, raise children, repair roofs, or carry grief. The Black Death didn't create fairness. It didn't erase suffering, but it cracked the permanence once perceived. The old world survived, but no longer stood with the same certainty. From that crack emerged the hardest truth. The Black Death was both an ending and a beginning. It was one of humanity's darkest disasters, leaving no path back to what existed before. It took children before they lived, parents before goodbyes, leaving homes with names unanswered. To label it a turning point doesn't lessen its tragedy. It reminds us that history doesn't unfold gently. Sometimes it shifts through dreams, building, and imagination. Other times it transforms through grief, tearing the world apart. The plague didn't create a new world through kindness. It forced one through Survivors didn't step into victory. They entered a future beside graves, memories, and unanswered prayers. That's the great paradox of the Black Death. It dismantled part of the medieval world, but from that destruction, Europe began to change. Perhaps that's why this story resonates across centuries, asking questions, no simple. What would you do if everyone around you began to disappear? Would you flee from the door where someone called your name? Would you stay, even if staying meant fear? Would you pray when silence felt larger than your faith? The Black Death teaches us that history isn't solely shaped by kings, wars, and dates. It's also shaped by ordinary people who wake to find their trusted world altered beyond. Most names are lost now. No monument remembers every mother, child, worker, or neighbor who bore grief during those years. But they mattered. They kept memory alive when so much vanished. They embodied the world before it broke, reminding us that survival isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's standing amid the ruins of what you love. The Black Death left behind more than loss. It posed questions that still belong to us. When the world changes suddenly, what kind of person do we become? The survivors didn't choose their time, fear, or grief. They were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary darkness. Some were shattered by it, some hardened, some discovered courage they never knew existed. Perhaps that's the deepest truth of this story. Survival is not merely about staying alive. It's about nurturing the small light within us when uncertainty looms. The Black Death reminds us that life is fragile yet deeply connected. The voices we hear today, those beside us, the ordinary mornings we take for granted, these are not trivial. They form the world we're fortunate to have before silence, and the lesson is simple yet profound. Do not wait for loss to recognize what matters. In our lives, we may not confront the Black Death, but we all face fear, change, loneliness, and uncertainty. When that happens, we must choose not to let fear turn us cold. We can check on others, speak with kindness, value ordinary days, and remember that being human isn't just about surviving tough times, but about remaining